Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners. Today we have another episode from our series of Fallujah bonus content. These episodes are part of our 20th anniversary of Fallujah II Operation Phantom Fury programming. These bonus episodes are the full length interviews we have been collecting for our 20th anniversary documentary of Fallujah II, which will be coming out soon, so please stay tuned for that. All of these interviews were so good, we didn't want them to just sit in our archive, so we decided to launch them as individual episodes of our show. This episode is with Staff Sergeant Luis Agostini. Luis was a combat correspondent attached to India Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines during the battle. Here is the second of our bonus content for our 20th anniversary of Fallujah II series. Enjoy.
So we're here today with Luis Augustini, and he is been gracious enough to give us his time to recount his experiences from the Battle of Phantom Fury, otherwise known as the Operation Al Fajr, aka Fallujah II. Luis, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be really good, and thank you for your contributions not only to this endeavor but to your country. Um, so, if you wouldn't mind, please go ahead and state your full name, your rank when you got out, years of service, and then tell us who you like, what your rank was, and what your billet was for Phantom Fury.
Sure, my name is Luis Agostini, and I was a Marine Corps Staff Sergeant, served from 2000 through 2012, and I was a combat correspondent. And during the Battle of Fallujah, during Phantom Fury, I was a sergeant, and I was attached to India Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines.
Ooh, 5th Marines, nice. Yeah, I did a bunch of pumps with 5th Marines, so that's awesome.
Wait,
And then where did you join the Marine Corps out of?
So I joined out of, I was in New York, so joined out of Spring Valley, New York. So that's in Rockland County, which is about maybe 40 minutes outside of New York City. So and that was about tried college for a year. Um, didn't do well at all, not because of ability. I think I was lacking that maturity and discipline of being independent and on my own. So my father, who was a Marine, he saw the value of discipline being instilled. So he strongly encouraged that I enlist after that first year of college. Very strongly, without any misinterpretation. So yeah, and it's funny, I enlisted initially, I actually chose the MOS of, military policeman, but you may not know this, a lot of New Yorkers don't have their driver's licenses.
Yep, I did know that. Yeah.
So, it took me a long time, and I did not get my driver's license in time before my ship date. So the recruiter and my parents were huddled, we're over our dinner table the Friday before trying to scramble so I don't go open contract. And we're looking at the pamphlet, and I did not want to be admin. I don't think I could be an infantryman. So trying to find a nice sweet spot, I saw combat correspondent. Like, wait, I've heard of that before. And I think everybody knows combat correspondent, associate that with Full Metal Jacket, and
That's
it seemed
right.
like a
Joker.
nice, right? So just a nice hybrid. Um, of worlds there. So that's the MOS that I chose and I qualified for. Um, and yeah, I shipped off. So I graduated boot camp on November 10th, 2000. Um, went to obviously MCT at Camp Geiger. From there, at the Defense Information School was my MOS school, where I attended a basic journalist course, learned how to be a photographer, news reporter, just the entire field of public affairs in a military environment. Um, so yeah, that was my journey of joining the Marine Corps and learning my craft.
And then where were you then on 9/11?
I was in so I had been state on late July of 2001. I got orders and reported to Camp Smith in Hawaii, Marine Forces Pacific. Camp Smith was a very command heavy element, not very conducive for a junior Marine for most, especially in a public affairs shop. So right away, I got into the Fleet Assistance Program or FAP. They sent me over to Marine Corps Base Kaneohe Bay. So I was at K-Bay where they had a paper. They had back then they had newspapers that was
Yeah.
published. God bless, I miss those so much, but um, I miss seeing papers and working on a paper. But they had a paper that they published once a week, so I had the opportunity there. I think at the time they were going to keep me over there, and there were other junior Marines that I served with. So I was there on September 11th. I was on the top rack in a barracks room, and my dad called. My parents were both New York City police detectives at the time. So my dad phone rings. It's like I think like 2:30 a.m. ish in Hawaii time. He calls and he lets me know, hey, freaking one of the twin towers got hit. I'm like, oh my god. So it's like, well, that's crazy. And still groggy 2:30. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And I try to go back to sleep, just not aware of what's going on. Obviously, a few minutes later, he calls back to tell me the second tower hit. That's when we all turned the TV on and, you know, just watched history unfold there. So it didn't take long at all before the barracks emptied and everybody's scurrying around and we all report back to our units and we go to the public affairs shop and just reporting to our NCOs and the gunny and doing whatever they need. But yeah, I was at K-Bay when that happened, and shortly not thereafter, I got defapped back, so basically sent back to Camp Smith, and I served out the remainder of my first term there. And I didn't get to. There was an element that did go forward that did deploy to Bahrain on under Marine Forces Pacific, supporting CENTCOM, I believe, or Marcent, but stayed behind. Um, and I think that partly influenced my decision to re-enlist because I did want an opportunity to get in the fight.
And then, so then what was it like then for you? So you said you reenlist. How do you end up at Camp Pendleton then? Or did you get attached from Hawaii to 5th Marines?
No, so yeah, so that was one of my enlistment incentives. I wanted to go to Camp Pendleton. So when I re-enlisted summer of 2003, chose Camp Pendleton, got orders to First Force Service Support Group, now known as MLG, Marine Logistics Group. So initially, I got orders to FSSG, and I was told right away, "Hey, you're deploying OIF 2 in the fall, late summer, fall of '04." Um, so get there, and actually, it went back to DINFOS, Defense Information School, for some training. Came back to Pendleton, and from there, just started the traditional deployment workup, making sure my checklists are checked off, and doing all of the different training and licensing and things like that. Um, all through the summer until I deployed, and I deployed with first FSSG to Iraq in August of 2004.
And then that landed you where you were in Al Assad or you TQ? Where were you at?
TQ. I was at Camp Scuttlebutt.
Yeah.
I was at TQ, I think, and I was at TQ, so got there in late August of 2004, and got there. I think my first impressions was that it seemed a bit more established than I was expecting. I think just based out of all of the imagery and videos that we saw from, the initial invasion and the march up to Baghdad and everyone living out of their Humvees and living on in convoys. But got there, it seemed a bit more established. I think that's a big thanks to our predecessor units that helped establish all the different camps and bases. So yes, I got there, got promoted to sergeant in September 1st of 2004, and from there, it was our unit was we had a captain who was a public affairs officer and a lieutenant was a deputy. There was a staff sergeant, two sergeants, including myself, and we also took on a lance corporal eventually. And from there, it was covering the FSSG mission out there, beans, bullets, band-aids, the supply convoys, bait camp fortifications, um, weapons drop off. So I was going out with these different units, um, covering the FSSG mission. And in October, they sent me to Camp Fallujah because we had some of the FSSG elements there. So I would go out to those companies and I'd go out with their convoys and cover their stories from Camp Fallujah.
Okay. And so when were you officially, I guess, attached then? How did that all work out?
So, unbeknownst to myself, I'm sure a lot of the other combat correspondents that were in theater, there was an established plan on they knew Al-Fajr was going to kick off. Um, just waiting from the official order from higher headquarters and everyone else involved in those decisions. But one day, so when I was on Camp Fallujah, I was working out of the one meth public affairs shop. So working out of there, having a great time with the guys over there, billeting with them. One day, say maybe mid October 2004, I walk into the public affairs shop, and on a big whiteboard, I see scribbled in marker, it's two RCTs, RCT 1, RCT 7, and then underneath the battalions that fall under RCT 1 and 7. And under those were several names. And under 3-5, I saw there was a Staff Sergeant Nathaniel Garcia, myself, a Corporal Enrique Sainz, and a PFT Miguel Carrasco. So when I saw, again, I'm covering beans, bullets, band-aids, right? And I think this whole time I wasn't really told that I was going to Fallujah. I think, if anything, it's the FSSG mission was they were establishing what's called an Iron Mountain. So trying to improve the logistics for getting fuel and ammo and food and everything else, making sure that there was no shortage of supply on the outskirts. So at the most, I think I was anticipating covering that. I saw my name under 3-5, and I was like, "Holy shit! Okay, like real." It got real, and it wasn't just me; it was dozens of other correspondents and broadcasters as well. There were about maybe 3 or 4 per battalion. I think there were maybe like 6 or 7 battalions total. Probably about 6 battalions, maybe. And whether you were with the wing or FSSG or MEF or division, they pulled almost all combat correspondents that were in theater under one MEF, and they attached them to a Marine Corps infantry battalion that was participating in Al Fashir.
And what was the timeline of this? Was this like September, October? When was this that you figured out?
In mid October, and you think about if we found out, and I'm sure the guys who worked at MEF, even the junior folks, they just hearing through the walls or overhearing, maybe they had a better idea that a lot of us were getting pulled, but I didn't. I don't think those of us that were not on MEF knew. But yeah, think about mid-October, and then Al Fajr commenced officially on 7 November. Not a lot of time, right? 3 weeks. So find out right away I'm going to be with 3-5, and find out the guys that I'm going to be with. And in a short amount of time, we hop on a small convoy to Camp Bahria, where 3-5 was, not far from Camp Fallujah. So we check in, we get there. I believe reported to or just fell under a captain that was the civil affairs or psyops. I forget which one. Captain Batty, his name was. So we spent the next 2 weeks on Bahria just getting acclimated, meeting the Marines, finding out which companies we're going to be attached to. I was attached, myself and Corporal Signs were attached to India Company, and I believe Carrasco was attached to Kilo Company, if I'm not mistaken. But we get there and right away just meet the Marines, just the grunts that we're going to be attached, that we're turning our lives over essentially, that as and trying not to be liabilities as well. I think number one, just not be a liability as an attachment.
And then, oh, excuse me, sorry. Damn dogs. So, one of the questions I have, so being with 3-5, did you know Jeremiah Workman, or did you meet him?
No,
Okay.
I did not get to meet him. I know his amazing story, and unfortunately, I never got to cross paths with him.
It's such an interesting juxtaposition, because being where you were at Camp Takatum and having spoken to him about Fallujah II, you were actually way more in the loop on what was going on than he was. According to him, when he talked to us, he had no idea. They had mentioned about going in, and then basically he woke up and there was this massive lineup of vehicles getting ready to go out, and then that's when he found out that that's what they were going to be doing. Like, so practically like 3 days before the engagement. Um, so
Man,
yeah, the fact that you knew 3 weeks out, I know it doesn't seem like a lot to you, but
yeah,
comparatively,
wow. Yeah, I mean, that's insane. Just, 72 hours notice that you're going to participate in one of the biggest battles in Marine Corps history. Yeah, but no, we had media embedded with us. We had a Fox News reporter, Greg Palcott or Alcott Palcott, I think it is. Um, he did a wonderful, wonderful documentary that I was actually looking for it. It's no longer online, but he was with 3-5 and uh, captured what happened right before and during and after. But yeah,
so what is I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask this question. I gotta step
yeah.
out really quick. So Nancy, if you could take it after this one. But the question I have for you then is, with you again, it didn't seem like a lot of time, but you did know more than a lot of, say, the trigger pullers or the guys who were gonna be going in. What was it that you actually did know? Um,
Well, just that we were going into Fallujah to secure the city, really. Um, that again, just knowing the having knowing the history from a young NCO's perspective was that they tried to take Fallujah in April. There was a lot of pressures from various sources that caused a ceasefire, caused us not to proceed with the operation during Vigilant Resolve. And then that whole summer, Fallujah turned into a hotbed, almost a bomb factory, led Zarqawi and the insurgents uh, that he had worked, the groups of insurgents that he worked with, the insurgent cells. So knew that Fallujah was just a big hotbed over that summer, and that there was going to be a renewed focus to take Fallujah back. And that was pretty much it. That we were going in, that the Marine Corps, that 1 MEF, First Marine Division, and all those battalions were going to go in, fight, and rid Fallujah of the insurgents.
And as a combat correspondent, you had a very unique role and a very unique perspective in this battle. Can you describe that a little bit? What makes the role of the combat correspondent so unusual?
So the role of a Marine Corps combat correspondent, and I put Marine Corps in front of that because there are combat correspondents who are not military service members.
Right.
We have civilian journalists.
And that's an
Uh,
important distinction to make. So I'm
yes.
glad you did that. Thanks for doing that.
So sure. So you have civilian journalists that are non-combatants, right? And there are different sets of rules and around their engagements and their presence. But all Marine Corps combat correspondents are Marines first. So again, that goes back to not just not being a liability, but also being an asset, right? To who we attach with. So learning how to integrate, um, almost be invisible in a way, just not really impede on the mission. But we're also armed, right? So we are also armed as well. And no matter whether it was whatever war or conflict, I think our MOS and photographers and correspondents also, they're always making nonstop that decision whether to have their M16 or M4 in their hands or their cameras, depending on the situation. So they always have to make that determination because their primary job is imageries, to capture imagery to help tell the Marine Corps story, to inform the public, to help uh, share the truth about what's actually happening. But also, you are a military serviceman. You are a Marine in a combat environment and in direct combat. So, if it calls for it, you're engaging in combat as well. You're pulling, you're sending rounds down range right alongside the infantry, with 3-5 or whoever. So, think we're Marines, and we are Marines first, and that the job by trade is to photograph or shoot video and write and whatever else it may be. But big distinction between a civilian journalist and a Marine, and also on the Marine combat correspondent side, we are proactively with bias telling the Marine Corps story. Because often we don't have that luxury always when we have civilian journalists that do embed with the Marine Corps. Agendas may vary, perspectives may vary, and a lot of influence from different places, can impact on how on the narrative that comes out. But we are there to tell the specific Marine Corps story about what's happening. If you don't mind, I'm gonna plug in my laptop real quick.
Yep.
Okay, one
Sure.
second.
Sure. So Nancy, have you been following the script, as it were?
I've got it here, more or less. I kind
Okay.
of strayed a little bit, just
No, it's
so
cool.
we could get into the specific role of what a Marine Corps combat correspondent is.
Yeah,
But
well,
I guess basically next question up would have been, yeah, where did I go? What problems did you foresee? That's kind of where we are now.
So okay, so I'll build on the combat correspondent part two.
Sure.
yeah, please.
Sure. So at the time, I think the Comstrat Marines of today might benefit from technology more than we did. And you think about that, you had videographers and combat correspondents and photographers that were with the units, but without any mechanism to get those imageries out. So one plan for us as a combat correspondent too, aside from keeping up with the units that we were with, how am I going to get my stuff back, my content back? So one plan was that they drew up was putting our camera cards or cassette tapes in an MRE bag, writing one meth sergeant major on it, and putting on a convoy because they knew nobody would mess with an MRE bag to the one meth sergeant major. So, and there was a designated Dropbox at Camp Fallujah for him that the folks that were staffing the one meth public affairs shop, they knew to go get it, push it out. So again, also having to think about multiple, you know, um, priorities at the same time. You are in no shit combat, fighting, staying alive, and helping out your Marines, but also on your job, I have to get these back, or else weeks will pass, and as far as the narrative goes, we're not getting it out. I benefited, I'd be getting ahead of myself, but I benefited once we kind of settled into this one location where we had the reporters. There was a photographer from AFP, Agency France Press, it's a wire service. He was looking over my shoulder. He saw the images that I had up on my screen, and he told me, "Hey, send me your 10 best shots." I'm like, "Wow, okay." I sent him, and he put them out over the international photo wire, and that was maybe within, I would say that was less than a week in, about maybe day 5 or 6, and we were able to get photos out.
And then, and pardon me for my ignorance, but were you dealing mainly with digital imagery, or did you have any, like, no kidding, like, actual film on rolls?
I think, as the military photography profession was, I think we moved past film, actual
Okay,
film, maybe, almost 8, 9, 10 years already. So we were
okay,
already full, yeah, full, progression into digital.
okay. And then, so I guess to go back then, as we were talking about sort of the information, what is it that you understood about Fallujah? So I know you said that you had, made some convoys up that way. Um, what was sort of your impressions going in about, because you knew this massive battle was happening, so clearly it was a hornet's nest. Could you just sort of tell us
Sure.
about where your headspace was?
So remember in The Lion King when Mufasa tells Simba, like, "You can't go there, that's the Badland?"
Yeah.
Like, in the simplest way, if you were to explain at the time what Fallujah was, that was that, right? But no, it was the bomb factory, right? It was the town that we tried taking earlier in the year where all the, after Baghdad fell, Saddam was removed, and they were, transitioning toward, towards reestablishing Iraq. Um, and between the Shiites and the Sunnis, and depending on where they were, who the sentiment of resentment or support for new Iraq. Fallujah was where all that resentment and all the pushback, a lot of it was heading, and a lot of bad. Obviously, I think we all knew what my first time I ever heard of the word Fallujah, was the bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, that green bridge where the contractors were killed and mutilated and hung. Right, I think that's the first time I even ever heard the word of Fallujah for myself, and I think a lot of other Americans and just people across the world. So that was the very first time I heard of Fallujah. And then obviously getting educated on everything happening from the contractors that were getting kidnapped and beheaded or held for ransom. It's just everything is Zarqawi. Um, that whole summer, right? That whole summer of just all the evil, really bad things that were happening out of Fallujah, in and around Fallujah, the Marines that we lost. Um, I would say that's the impression I had of Fallujah, and knew that as time went on and as more time went on that we weren't going in, it was just getting deadlier and deadlier for everyone that was deployed in theater.
And then, but did you have any specifics about sort of, I just use military terms, sort of the composition, disposition of the enemy?
Not No, none whatsoever. Not from
Okay.
mine. It's funny too because for this interview I'm just reading a lot more. I reconnected with guys that I hadn't spoken with in years, see what they thought, just to kind of make sure our memories and align and line up. Um No, like even just no. Basically, we came in from the north. We know 3-5 northwest corner of Fallujah. Pretty much it. But as far as anything else, no, not really. At that time,
And were you ever, did you, once you got up there, did you have a chance to leave the wire? Because I know they were doing some shaping ops and some security patrols and stuff. Did you get outside the wire or were
I did not. There
okay?
was a feint. I know there were some feints that were happening
Hmm.
south of the city, and we had some other folks, correspondents that were preparing. Um, Never did, but no, not. I think there was one maybe even before I left for Bahria. I remember I was sent, and forgive me, but I was sent with forget what, it's a company that recovers wrecked vehicles. So I was on the back. I was at the Camp Fallujah gate, standing by this big machine that would go out and recover wrecked Humvees just in case. And it was at night, and that was the closest I got before Al kicked off. But
Hmm.
that was the closest I got to getting close to leaving the wire before Al-Fajr. But yeah, that was the extent of it.
And as you
And
mentioned, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
and then obviously on Camp Aria, covering some of the training that was still happening, like tank integration and just they had put the tape on the floor and then maneuvering as an element, just rehearsals, right? Just urban
Yeah.
tactic rehearsals and stuff like that, covering that stuff.
So yeah, so you're able to see um the feints in the South. You're seeing some of the rehearsals. What did you understand about sort of the overall scheme of maneuver from where you were located? Not necessarily like, I'm not trying to ask you to act or to think like a general,
Yeah.
but where you were, Sergeant Agostini, there watching all this stuff happen. What were some of your thoughts on the plan?
I knew we were going to overpower. I think we were going to overpower the insurgents. I mean, I think they took off. They took the leash off, right? Like
Hmm.
not that there were not any rules of engagement, but I think they were going to let the Marines fight, and knowing that there was a concerted effort, um, psyops and civil affairs effort to inform the residents, to encourage them to please leave, women, everyone leave, and those of you that remain behind will be considered and enemy combatants, right? So knowing the steps that they took, I knew about that, and knowing that okay, like we're for real. like combat will ensue, and like it was going to be really, really hard, heavy combat. So that's
Man.
what I knew. We were going in to rid, to kill, to rid, to rid them of insurgents.
Man, that's gnarly. What was it? Did you guys, as correspondents, have a role within that psyops campaign to maybe not necessarily engage with the Iraqis, but to get a message home that, like, hey, this is going to be crazy, but we've done everything we can to mitigate civilian losses? Or was your focus strictly on the Marines on the line?
Well, we did. I mean, obviously, our content, eh, a bit of both, but there's a distinction, and I know they worked really hard because they did not want to lose the trust of the public, of the American public, of the international public. Um, Not blurring those lines between IO, psyops, and public affairs, because our job was to tell straightforward truth and capture what was happening and report it straightforward, and facilitating that flow of information between uh, our elements and the media, and using the media as a channel for the public, where IO, they're influencing and shaping operations. There was obviously communication between the two, right? And they're working together to ensure that everyone's on the same page. But from my perspective at the time, I was always on that school of thought that you can't blur those lines between public outreach and psyops and IO, because if you do that, then really, then you're going to impact trust.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting because one of the big criticisms of Vigilant Resolve was is that for you talked to Marines that were there, said there shouldn't have been a second Fallujah because we could have won the first, but they lost the public sentiment back home because it had gotten so crazy
And
that the politicians essentially told them, "Hey, you got to stop. This is getting out of control."
and I've become somewhat of a short-term historian. Like, again, as a 23, 24-year-old Marine, um, and junior NCO, I feel like I know more now about the background and all of everything that's surrounding it, and and the context, historical, political influence, and context, and all those factors than I did when I was at Camp Pendleton, right? Just getting my check-in, check-out sheet checked. Um, yeah, just knowing that, um, especially the local Iraqi media or Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, just the role that they had played in facilitating misinformation or incomplete information at best, severe misinformation often, right? About maybe whether it's over inflating numbers, overestimating impact of it to civilian casualties, right? Like, and did that allowed did was that allowed to go unchecked? Or really, really public strong pushback at the time? Like, at the time, I couldn't tell you. Like, looking back, Monday morning quarterback 20 years later, of course, you could say there's so much more that we could have done, that I feel we did a much better job during Phantom Fury, and getting taking that initiative, and taking the narrative back.
Well, hey, this is gonna be kind of one of the stickier parts. Again, if you want to take a break,
Sure.
whatever you want to do, but if you wouldn't mind for us, if you could start at November 7th and just sort of recount the battle as you remember it. I know, you could go as long as you want with it. Jeremiah Workman, I mean, he got his Navy Cross on the 23rd, which is like what the historians say is the official last day of the battle. I mean, so if you want to talk to us about the first 6 days, you want to talk
Sure.
to us about the entire, 45 days. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind telling us your experiences in Fallujah.
Sure. So I know on, believe it's November 6th, I believe that's when, um, we all loaded up into AAVs, and
Hurrah!
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
I'm a tracker, yeah. So
exactly, yeah. God damn, they like, oh, it was nasty in there.
of
I mean,
course.
like, those are memories that now I cherish, and I will cherish for the rest of my life, and just the forced bonding that happens in there.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
But yeah, just so remember, okay, so we all pack in, yeah, so we're all AVs, make our way to the outskirts of Fallujah, northwest side, and I, from my memory, November 6th, I believe that's when we're there. We hunker down, start digging fighting positions. We're gonna spend the night, and I remember just getting my e-tool out. The ground was hard as hell, sparks flying when you hit with when you're trying to dig a fighting hole. It's raining, it's cold. The mosques were obviously I don't understand what's, but I took it as like almost intimidation messages or just angering us in a way, so just all the elements between the mosques blaring out from the insurgents using the speakers to blare out. um so spend the night that night, and then the next day is 7 November. And again, just waiting around, clearing, cleaning weapons, shooting the shit. Um, and we know, and we see this aircraft that are, shaping and doing what they do to get the Fallujah ready for us. There's psyops there, blaring Metallica, and all kinds of just doing what they do. And we're told that we're waiting for engineers to clear pass through the berm for us to make our way through. So nightfall comes, that finally happens. We're in the AVs and we start going up in the AVs, and then I see the gunner just letting off rounds, and the Marines inside are pumped up, ready to go. And me, I was worried about night, and in terms of, man, I'm not gonna see shit, right? Like it's gonna be so hard to be able to see. I'm gonna have to be over reliant on my NVGs, on my night vision goggles, like. But once we got through, and once that ramp fell and we came out and we believe we hooked left, I was surprised at how it seemed how well lit the city was, at least compared to what I was envisioning, right? So almost like a movie set almost. So with me is Corporal Signs. He's video, I'm photo, and we're with believe it was first squad, second platoon, India 3-5. And from there is just the entire night into overnight hours, just clearing houses nonstop. I believe I think 3-5 was one of, if not the only battalion that was going to clear every single house. A lot of the others were just making or just using more rapid movement. We were clear, like just really clearing all houses. Going through and just seeing the red chem lights, and worried about booby traps as well, because again, all the intel leading up was that with the tunnels and everything else, that they were going to booby trap the houses, and they'd be marked by red chem lights, and right away you see red chem lights. So it was a very, very, very fast pace. And our squad leader was actually, I believe he was a lance corporal, Ricky Meyer. um so lance corporal, probably, I'm assuming, busted down a few times, but very, very, very proficient at his craft and respected by everyone, right? Respected by all the Marines that were in his squad. I'm a sergeant. That went away because I'm entrusting this kid with my life, right? And he is leading. He is the man, and he a frantic pace of bottom up, top down, jumping roofs, bottom out. It was like we had to stop a few times to catch our breath, and he was encouraging us. Um, and we're just keeping up that pace, and there's other elements that are letting off rounds and engaging. And then we get to a point where maybe it might be like 3 a.m. ish, I'm guessing. And we finally take a small pause, and we set up fire watch inside the houses, right? Inside the house. So we're all there catching our breath, um, set up fire watch. I actually had a shift with an Iraqi soldier for fire watch, a 1 hour shift with an Iraqi soldier that was with us. And when we're on watch, he obviously language barrier, but he takes out a photo of his wife and shows it to me. And I took out a photo of my family, just sharing, right? So it's like some things are universal, like in those moments when you're serving your country, and really all the geopolitical things that are happening, like we're still soldiers and Marines and men that just we're looking out for each other, and what matters is our family, right? So that will always stick with me. That pace, honestly, it just picks up the next day, and we're jumping roofs, and we're jumping roofs, roof to roof, and I'm like, I'm gonna die. Like I'm gonna fall, not from like I'm gonna die, not from a round or an RPG, but from like falling off a building. But again, just trusting these guys. If they're doing it, I got to do it, right? I can't. There's no. I can't turn around and go back to base. There's none of that, you know. But you got to just keep up and launching myself to the next rooftop and falling on my back or my ass. And I actually the next one there was a I fell in a hole on the street. There was somehow I didn't see it. There was a hole in the ground that and I fell. I was pretty much like chest deep. So it's like almost like Super Mario Brothers when you die and fall. Like that's what it felt like. So it was like, man, I'm just like falling all over.
It's a perfect fighting position though.
Pretty much,
You're
yeah.
already
It's set
you're
up
just deep definitely.
ability for but from the, I'm just keeping up. Keep up. Don't be a liability, and get what you need to tell these guys' story, to tell what's happening. You're seeing this is history happening. Um, again, just moving through that urban environment, house to house, jumping over cars, staying in so they could discharge so some shells and rocket and bomb so our guys can shape and bomb these and positions. And it's just a lot of that nonstop. I'll say nonstop pace. There were moments of I won't even call it downtime, but when we can catch our breath because whether we're waiting for discharges to happen and you have to stay hunkered down, um, that point, just like finding humor in the moment, right? Or shooting the shit or making sure, hey, you're right, you're good. Yeah, man, this is crazy, huh? Like almost reflecting, like taking a moment, a second two to reflect. Like, wow, like we're doing this. Um,
Hey, Luis, could you kind of give us some of the what you at least what you can remember of some of like the tactile experiences, like smells,
yeah.
um, the like was it hot? Was it cold? Hot during the day, colder at night. Um, like what was it like? You said you're jumping rooftop to rooftop. Like, are we thinking, for people who've never been
Yeah.
in the Middle East, I mean, they're walled homes, right, with massive
Well,
compounds. Like,
yes,
talk to us
compound
about, yeah.
concrete walls with courtyards. Thankfully, I would say often the roofs next door would be a little lower, so it's that made sometimes a lot easier, or at least the ones I did, to make your way over. It's not like you're trying to clear a parallel building. Um, but yeah, a lot of this cement courtyards. I would say during the day, I don't remember it being hot, but obviously we're talking about with all the gear that we have on and moving and sweating, everything else. Um, I think it was chilly, if I recall correctly. Looking back, I think maybe at night, um, just like you had mentioned, um, dirty, filthy houses. I would say just Um, and at this point, all the families and the children had gone, and it's at this point, majority of the insurgents that are living and operating out of these, so men in their 20s and 30s and 40s, teens even, that are operating out of these. So very gray, very, I would say hues of like brown and gray. And it's funny if I see a photo on a social media feed just based on the tone and the color, I know exactly where it is. I'm like, that's a Fallujah photo without ever having seen that photo before in my life. Just the colors and the hues. I know exactly where that is. And then when I read the caption, sure enough, it's Fallujah.
And so, where were you at then? So, historical accounts that say that the heavy fighting lasted for about 6 days. Is that about how you remember it?
Yeah, I would say 8 November was the first day. And then it was after the Marine Corps birthday, it was still fighting. I think I want to say after the first 5 or 6 days, maybe within a week, we were in a really good position to the point where at that point we start going back to re-clear the houses again at that point, going back to re-clear them. I would say I was with my platoon for about 4 days. I got recalled, so I was with them for about 4 days. the PFC that was with us, or that was with a different company, he showed up. He said, "Hey, you got to go back. Staff Sergeant Garcia needs you." I was so pissed off at that time. Obviously, 4 days in, I'm better. I'm attached. I don't want to go anywhere. I yelled at, even though it wasn't his fault whatsoever. Like he delivered the order, but so I had to go back, and we regrouped in. It was a school. Yeah, it was a school that had been secured, that ourselves and I believe maybe some of the medical and civil affairs slabs were working out of, and some SJA elements, I believe, too. So we get there, and that's when the plan comes up. Hey, come back. We have to get your stuff back to headquarters, or back to Cap Fallujah. So I made my way on a quick convoy back to Cap Fallujah, dropped my stuff off, and came back. Um, and at that point, I would say that's maybe a weekend. And at that point, yeah, I would say and it's really, I hate saying the heaviest fighting was over, because, like you said, that fighting went into late December, and Marines were still dying in December, right? But I would say the intensity of the initial fighting was had subsided by then.
What were your impressions during those few days from what you were able to glean from the feints, the shaping ops, the rehearsals? Were you like, hey, this is going exactly to plan? Or were you just like, I just need to make it to the next house?
Oh, next house, I think the mentality, you're not worried about the, strategy, right? Military strategy and how this is impacting anything. Yeah, I think just the next house, and until we're told, hey, we got it done. I think until mission over, right? I think that's the mentality that you're working off of, is just keep pushing and going as much as you can until, next house, not so much that, at least from my perspective, that objective A or B has been secured, has been achieved.
Yeah, that's thank you so much for all of this,
Um,
as much as you can recall. Anything else that comes to mind?
um, so when we're in that school, we started, and that's when now we start moving out of. So it's the public affairs team 435. We're working out of that school, and now our staff sergeant has oversight over us, and he's able to dispatch us to cover this or cover that. Now he has more we're more centralized at that point. So I know a couple of other things that happened from there. We started getting displaced civilians coming into that school, and kind of caught us off guard. But we start not processing them, but getting them into certain rooms within that school that we would have to now establish security for, handing them their food and water that they can eat, interacting with them. Um, I was sent out on one mission where we were going to escort uh, Fallujans back into the city, men, to recover remains of the fallen fighters, so they can be buried in accordance with um, Muslim culture, Islamic culture. So that was, I would say, that was pretty intense. There was no combat at that time that I saw, but just seeing that was when I think the first time I saw the real aftermath of what happened. Um, charred bodies, charred bodies and limbs. Seeing, I remember, really the body of a big man, almost in the prayer position, charred. Um, Teeth and eyes, and just seeing all that, just seeing the aftermath, and escorting. And there's a photo. Reuters has a photo of me escorting about 6 or 8, maybe 4 to 6 Iraqis that are holding a body bag. Um, and I'm escorting them through. So that's the first time I saw the aftermath. Um, One other memory that obviously that sticks out from that deployment was, this was maybe on day 4 or 5 of the initial week. Um, Doing a really good job keeping pace. I believe there was one courtyard, one building that the Iraqis, who were performing admirably, right? Training, obviously, the training were very limited, right? And these are men that these are the ones who were willing to support our side and doing the best that they could. There was one motivated Iraqi soldier that, if I recall correctly, he wanted to take point on this one of clearing a house. And I believe when he made it up to the courtyard on the second floor, he was met with uh, might have been AK or with gunfire. He was shot dead. Right behind him was that squad, our Lance Corporal squad leader, Ricky Mayer, and he took some hits as well. So thankfully, he survived that, but he was taken out of the fight and medevaced out. Shot, I believe, like in the groin area, the legs or groin area. Um, but that was probably, for my direct experience, the one time I saw one of our guys get hit. So I believe the Iraqi soldier was killed and our squad leader got hit.
Jeez. What was it like working with the Iraqis? Was that something that you guys had known going in that, hey, you're going to link up with this unit? Or was it just one of these things where you guys just sort of converged together and then just coalesced right there on the battlefield?
I think hard to say at what point I knew that was going to happen.
Because I got to imagine you had to do some deconfliction, right? Or you got some green on blue
Yeah,
potential incidents, right?
you always have just you keep, your guard is still a bit elevated, right? You're not
Yeah.
completely letting your guard down, but I mean, they were sharing the same misery that we were, them
Yeah.
and interpreters, and sometimes they were making us tea at some point in the houses. When we have some of that downtime, they would go ahead and make chai tea for us, and like their hospitality was really nice at that point. But
Yeah, I know Jeremiah Workman had said the same thing when they had some downtime that they would bring the Iraqis would bringing in all kinds of food and chai and
yeah,
stuff for the Marines.
yeah.
Well, so looking back, like you said, so 20 years after you were there, sort of what would you say is your assessment of your involvement? Was it as did it work out exactly to plan? Or, I mean, clearly you should, and hopefully you do feel just a, a, a wonderful sense of honor and fulfillment for your involvement. But militarily, like how do you feel that the operation went, and then in particular your role in it?
Um, it was one battle, right? It was one battle. It was a major historic battle, but that, the conflict and our presence there has gone, went on for how long, right? Like officially, I remember announcing that an initial Iraq withdrawal in what 2009 or 2010, right around that time, kind of. But then we still maintained a presence there.
Yeah, we still have folks there even
Now
today.
we still
Yeah,
do, but I just remember, I think some kind of announcement
I think it was
to
12 when we officially like said we're
yeah.
no longer
Oh, okay,
fighting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
'Cause I
yes,
was I&I,
okay,
in, Jacksonville, and our guys went to Al Assad, and that was 9.
okay,
So, yeah, I think it was 12 we were
okay.
officially done, but I could yeah, it
And maybe there was some kind of announcement that took place, and 'cause I remember I was in Afghanistan when I remember hearing something about winding down in Iraq, if I recall correctly.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I
again,
was in Afghanistan in 11 and 12, and
okay,
so that I think that's when I heard it as well.
I think the point being is
Yeah.
that what 8 years later, it was still
Yeah.
8 years plus now today, right? There's still a presence there. I think a lot of us, that romantic mindset of I will serve and fight so my kid doesn't have to. Um, Spoke about this earlier, but like my son is a corporal. He's a combat videographer. Not saying he's going anywhere near anywhere.
Right.
Uh, Even now, just as a veteran of OIF of Al Fajr, um, having lived that experience, like knowing what it is, and now I just hope my son, who is a Marine, who's trained for that, and it's just like I was, hope if that call comes, just head first go into it. But from my personal standpoint, like we're still seeing conflict right around the world. That was one battle that showed the resolve of the Marines, of that showed the true Marine capability of like when the leash is off, how we fight, how we can fight, what we can get done. I think that was it was a big example of what we can do when we are allowed to. And it gets compared to Way City, right? So knowing that you were involved in um, a historical Marine, a moment of Marine Corps history, even little things like when I see, um, when I was the, when I went to visit my son at his MOS school, and on a bench, they also train combat artists over there, and I saw one of the bench outside the Marine detachment. There was a little painting or mention of Fallujah, like it makes you cry. Like, oh my God, like anything, like a lot of things just really hit. And I'm actually attending. I'm going out to Camp Pendleton on November 6th. Their 3-5 is having a 20-year reunion event from the 7th through the 8th. Um, and I'm connected with a lot of these guys on social media, but I haven't seen them for since I left the city of Fallujah. Haven't seen them since in
Wow.
person. So that'll be something. Yeah.
I have a question. Luis, you were generous enough to share some of your photos with Leatherneck so we could publish them in our November article. When you look back at the photographs you take, do you i- can you look at those and remember shooting that picture, taking capturing that image, or is some of that a bit of a blur for you?
No, that's great. The images are, I think when I look at that, it's almost like it's like AI comes to life where I could see movement. I could look at the photo and almost see movement. Um, there's one photo that I shot of, I think it was on November 10th, where during a brief operational pause, um, the squad sitting on a staircase and resting there. And that was after maybe 48, 72 hours. And I remember just, I could see myself, I'm on the ground in the corner. And right there, we're actually waiting for a detonation to go off. So we were having some downtime there or a brief operational pause. But yeah, I could see everyone just checking their gear, resting, catching their breath, getting some seconds of shut eye, but I could still see myself there. Um, there's one photo that I took that today I kicked myself in the ass for because it's a photo of a Marine in a kneeling position, aiming in, letting off rounds on the roof of a school. But you can tell the photo, whoever took that photo is clearly standing. So I took the photo standing, like, man, this is great composition. I can see the whole landscape. I'm like, but now I'm like, you freaking idiot. Like, what, standing on a rooftop in Fallujah to get a photo, stuff like that. Um, yeah, so I can absolutely, I can, a lot of these photos that I've taken, I look back and like, how the hell did it's like, how did you accomplish that, or how, you made it. I think I look at that and we made it, you made it. Um, just almost like in hindsight, like I could not believe that I was a part of that, and that was able to help capture that and tell that story.
And that the picture that you were speaking about, the Marines on the staircase, that's one of the most compelling combat images I've ever seen. So beautiful photo. Well done.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And even with my um with the correspondence that reported to me, even in when I became a staff NCO um in Afghanistan, I told them sometimes the best photos are not the ones where a Marine is aiming in or letting off rounds, or sometimes it's those very candid moments um, where you can just where you can see emotion or lack of emotion or fatigue, or we just capture raw feeling, even when nothing is happening. There was one photo from Operation Mushtarak, the Battle of Marja. I was a staff NCO and I had Marines that were with 1-6 and 3-6 and got some photos back. And one of my favorite photos is just a Marine on his pack. He's grimy except his mouth. He has a crystal bright white smile, and he's sitting back on his pack with his eye pro on and just a big smile. To be able to smile during a moment like that, just testament to who we are as Marines. So again, like those photos that not necessarily of active combat, but just showing emotion. Those were always my favorites.
We might have to have you come back on if we do something like this for Mushtarak as well. I was in Marja, but after I was there in 11, so it was after
So I
Mushtarak kicked
stayed on.
off.
So since I was now a boss, a boring boss, and a staff sergeant, I stayed on Camp Dwyer. So I didn't get to have any.
Oh,
Yeah. So it was the. Now I stayed behind it. It was my guys that I was making sure
yeah.
to get stuff out. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to avoid Dwyer as much as possible, but I was at the government center there in Marja,
Yeah.
so
That was I liked it there, to be honest. That government center
yeah,
wasn't. Yeah.
it wasn't too bad until we got bombed.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Um, well, just last thoughts, especially as we're talking about your son. As you're reflecting on the battle, what do you think today's Marines can learn from some of your experiences?
I thought about this, and I'm glad we brought that up because today's generation of Marines includes my own son. So I think one
But
thing,
yeah,
and I
I mean, just to add a little more
yeah,
to it, all of us are gone. There aren't NCOs like you could turn to that were lance corporals that
oh,
can now. There's no battalion commanders that were company commanders. Or,
yeah,
the
yeah.
guys are either retired or they're all wearing too much on their collar. So
Yeah.
yeah, what would you say to this emerging generation?
Well, I would say aside from just directly about Fallujah, Semper Gumby, right? Stay flexible, stay ready, because again, I was first of SSG. I did not know that I was going to be with 3-5, right? So being able to be flexible, a flexible mindset, and just always be prepared and ready because you never know when you get that call that you're going to be called to go be in a forward environment or an expeditionary environment. So today's Marines, even especially for the Marines that might be in garrison, right? That they're at a base unit or garrison unit, just stay hard, um, keep up with your training, and just do everything you're supposed to do because you never know when you get the call. You don't want to get the call or an opportunity and you didn't do your best to keep up or keep current with your training, with your rifle scores, your PFT, and all that training, right? So just always stay ready because right now we're in a quote unquote, uh, we have elements that are in harm's way, but we're not in OIF, OEF right now, right? So, but you just never know when something will occur that will call us. And no matter what unit you're with or your MOS, just stay ready because you never know when you're going to get that call. Um, Also, I would say um, it's stay in touch. I think we're benefiting more from social media now to be able to stay in touch, right? But you never want to lose contact with, especially as like attachments, like myself, or there's a lot of other attachment Marines that were attachments that didn't serve with, that weren't with these units before in, stateside or in theater and then afterward. But always, do your best to stay in touch as an attachment with those Marines because these are important bonds that you'll carry and hold until the day you die. And I really hope that today's leaders, especially for like Comstrat or other units that would attach to a frontline unit, that we're doing a better job supporting our Marines when they come back because they are carrying a lot of experiences and bonds that, let's say, they're attached with one battalion and they come back, um, that post deployment cycle that they get the chance to still integrate or interact with their previous units, again, the support they need versus just a cold cut and coming back and expected to carry on without really acknowledging what they had gone through. I think that's one thing that's really hard for whether you're public affairs or other, MOS that attaches to a unit. You come back, it's almost like a cold cut, come back and then just expect to carry on as normal.
No, that's really good. That's really profound. Um, just anecdotally, as an Amtracker, we deal with that attached detached relationship. But then when I was in Iraq the second time, I had my own battle space. We were serving as a provisional infantry company, and we had, because I owned my own battle space, I had all kinds of, military working dogs, bomb sniffing dogs, EOD teams, psyops, human intel guys. And like you said, in a very short amount of time, you create like these just unbelievably, just these deep bonds with these guys. And then, yeah, they do go away and you miss them without even realizing it. Not too long ago, I ran into one of my human guys at the PX. I think he was a sergeant when I had him, and he was a gunny, about to pin on Master Sergeant when I saw him again. And it was like once I saw him, then I realized how much I missed
Yeah.
seeing him, even though it was like 8 years later or something.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it's not. But yes, I
Absolutely.
I echo that sentiment big time.
I think our recording time is coming because we only
Yeah.
set it up for.
Yeah, but Luis, then thank you so much for giving us your time today, for recounting with us. If there's anything that comes up, please let us know and we'll get you back on, and we'll get that in, we'll splice it up and do all that good stuff.
So much. I really appreciate it, honestly, and I'm surprised at how I held it. I don't talk about this. I know it's cliche to say I don't talk about this. When I do, my wife and my son, probably the two people that I've spoken to about it. My wife, and both who are Marines, so it's easier to talk about it with them. And when I do, new memories always pop up, and when that happens, that's when you start to get overcome with emotion because you start those new memories spring up emotions that you had forgotten about or hadn't experienced yet. That that much separate. So, thank you so much for letting me share. Do you know when maybe you said this would be archived as a complete standalone? Do you know when that might go online?
I'm working on the page now. We'd hope to have it up in time for the anniversary.
Okay, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
And we'll keep you posted every step of the way. We'll let you know when stuff is available
yeah,
and
okay,
yeah, in fact tomorrow I'll send you the web copy of the article. Um
okay, great.
and if I can remember to, I'll get you some PDFs as well. I got to see if I can access them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so
And we'll
much.
stay in touch too, because depending on the success of this one, I can guarantee a Mushtarak one is coming down the pipe. So
Okay,
Thank you for sharing all that with us. We really, really appreciate it.
no, thank you so much. And really quick, one of my corporals that was in Mushtarak, combat correspondent, he's now my son's captain.
get out of here.
That's awesome.
Brian Tuthill, Captain Tuthill. Yeah, he's now my
Oh, I
son's
know
captain.
that name. I know
Tuthill,
that name.
yeah, yeah.
I
So he was my guide in Afghanistan, and also my wife. He also served under my wife in 29 Palms, and now he's my son's captain.
That's so funny. That's
Yeah,
great.
only in the Marine Corps.
Yeah,
and he
really.
can't get away with anything because there's so many people out there saying, "Hey, I knew you as a dad. I knew your dad, or I held you as a baby."
Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can also say, hey, don't let him tell you anything because it got dirt on that guy
Oh
too.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, thank you, Luis, and best of luck to your Yankees, I guess.
Yeah, let's go.
Oh,
Yanks in 4. Thank you so much.
all right.
Good night.
Good night.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Lichman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.